Hello guys, and welcome back to another Raising Reef video. In this tank build series episode we're going to be scaping the new reef tank with real reef rock. So this is real reef rock made by Real Reef Solutions. I mistakenly said in a previous video about this rock that it was made by Carib Sea. Carib Sea make a different product called Life Rock. It looks very similar in appearance to this. How similar it is in actual makeup I couldn't tell you, but just to clarify, we're using real reef rock from Real Reef Solutions in this tank build. I have a few big boulders like this. I think I've got 3 of those in total. I have a few pieces of plate rock and a smaller boulder bit. I've got an idea in my head of what I want to create and how I want the overall look to appear. Again, this is just going to be a foundation to grow corals off of, so we're not looking to completely make an end scape with this rock. We're just going to create an interesting foundation with lots of places that I'm going to be able to mount corals on. I'm also going to be securing this rock in place so that it doesn't wobble around or fall off. There's nothing worse than going to stick a frag down and then pushing down on the rock to try and secure it, only to find that the rock is then unstable and you're trying to secure something to something that isn't secure to anything else. So it's all going to be stuck together. I'm going to be using a combination of milliput, which is just a 2-part epoxy resin, which you just knead it up into like a squidgy dough, and then you can use that to stick the rocks together. I also have some D&D, just grab it, Aquascape construction epoxy. I have some of that here. I'm going to be using that in areas that show, because this is coloured the same colour as coralline algae and therefore will blend in initially and look a little bit more natural. If you use just the milliput, it dries quite white and therefore you can see all of the areas at which you've stuck the rocks together, and it can just take a little bit of time for that to then overgrow with coralline algae and stuff like that. The difference between the two is that one is really cheap. A packet of milliput will cost you about a couple of quid, whereas the aquascaping stuff that is coloured, this one is £5 a pack, so it's considerably more expensive, but that's why I'm going to just be using one of these to fill in the gaps and cover over any areas that have got the white showing. There are a few things that I like to take into consideration when I'm placing the rock within my aquarium to create a nice scape. I like to leave a little bit of room at the back if I can, so that I can get down there to clean the back glass if I choose to do so. Sometimes I like to leave it to, grow coral over or coralline algae and look a little bit, natural on the back. Other times I like to keep it nice and clean and dark black so that all of the coral colours stand out against it. Not sure how we're going to go with that when we set this tank up. Most likely I'm going to try and keep it clean and keep it nice and fresh looking. So I will want to leave that little bit of space behind so I can get down there to keep it all clean behind the rockwork. Another factor is how close to the sides that you position the rockwork. Obviously corals are going to grow up, but there are also many corals are going to grow outwards as well. And if you position the rockwork too close to the edge glass, one, you may struggle to get down to clean it, but once the corals that you've put on it start to grow out, they're either going to start to touch the glass and therefore you're going to be continuously trimming them back, or you're going to be snapping them off when you try and clean the glass sides, which need to be done on a regular basis to keep it looking nice and smart. We want to make a nice interesting scape that's just not a pile of rocks. We want it to look quite aesthetically pleasing from day one. Basically it's a foundation for the corals to grow off, but we still want to be pleased with what we've come up with. So we want to be a bit creative, trying to create some overhangs maybe, or some like bridges or some swim-throughs. Obviously I'm working with quite a small tank, so I'm going to have to be quite creative about how I go about doing that. But I think I can come up with something pretty cool, and we'll see how it goes. So let's start putting some rock in there and see. Oh, I'm breaking bits off of it already. Let's chuck a bit. Let's start putting the rock in and see what we can come up with. So I think I've come up with an aquascape that I'm happy with. I've placed all of the rocks where I think I want them. I've got the plate rocks on top of the boulders, jutting out, creating some overhangs. I've got some areas that are open on the sand bed where I'll be able to place some of the corals that I want to put down there. I've already got some corals in mind that I want to add to this system, and I'm trying to accommodate their needs. I've got some height at the back, so it's kind of sloping down from the back towards the front. There's the back area is going to be where most of the SPS corals are placed, and they can sort of grow up from there. And then in the lower areas there may be a few SPS here dotted around here and there, but predominantly the lower areas are going to be LPS. So I've tried to stick to the rules that I laid out at the start, where I didn't want to get too close to the sides, so that I've got that space for corals to grow and I can get in there and work around the rockscape. I've also left myself a small gap at the back where I should be able to get down there and clean the glass quite easily. And I'm pretty happy with what I've come up with. So now what I need to do is go back in and add the milliput to secure everything in position. This stuff comes in two parts. You have what looks like a yellow part, and then there's a grey part. When you mix it together and make sure it's a uniform colour, then you can use it to stick the rocks together or secure frags or whatever you want to do with it. It is reef safe, so you don't need to worry about it contaminating the water. Let's take those off. And like I say, I've got two different types here. I've got this inexpensive milliput, I'm going to need quite a lot, so I'll mix up. I don't like to mix too much up in one go. It becomes quite a lot to deal with. It does take quite a long time to go off. You've probably got 2 hours before it sort of goes hard. Working time, you've probably got maybe an hour of actual manipulating this stuff before it becomes unusable. You can use this underwater. It does turn the water a little bit milky, so that's just something to look out for. As it cures, I think it actually absorbs some oxygen out of the water also, so you'll want to make sure you don't use too much in one go if that's going to be a concern for you. But other than that, it's a good product to use to stick rockwork together or corals in place. The fact that it takes a long time to cure means that in some applications it's not very practical. If you want to stick a rock that, say, isn't stable on its own, you may need to support that in some other way until this stuff cures. But once it does, if it's been applied well and it's got a good hold on it, you should be able to take any supports away, and you should be confident that it's going to support the weight of the rock that you've put on it. So it's just a case of kneading these two pieces together until, as you can see there, it's not quite mixed properly. You can see the two different parts, the yellow and the grey. I'll just continue to mould that stuff together until we start to get a uniform colour. Some people will put this in the microwave for a few seconds. That makes it a lot more pliable. I don't find that necessary to do that. I have tried it on one occasion and it did go quite sticky, and it was easier to knead together, but I don't know, I just didn't like the idea of doing it. Could overcook it, I suppose, and it could go a bit wrong, but it doesn't take too long to get this stuff to mix together nicely. If I'm securing a coral or frags with this, what I might do is mix it up, and I might leave it to sit on the side for about 40 minutes before I actually use it. This way it becomes less squidgy and it starts to firm up, and therefore you can secure the coral, squash it down into it, position it in place, and it's got more rigidity to it and it's more likely to hold it in place, and it's got less curing time. So that's just something I would be inclined to do if you're trying to stick corals in place. I found that quite often when it's quite newly mixed up, you'll put a coral into position, you'll milliput it in place, you think it's nice and secure, you'll sit there and watch it for 10 minutes, think, yeah, that's good. You'll walk away, you'll walk back, and the coral will be on the bottom every time. So yeah, I've taken to leaving it to cure slightly before I use it now, just to avoid that problem, because it's quite annoying when you think you've cleared up and you're all done to have to go back in and do a bit more messing around with this stuff. Well, this stuff is now quite well mixed up, and I can just pull pieces off as much as I want and use that to secure the rocks into position, which I'll be doing now. So I've used up the first half of this pack, securing the back three pieces of rock together. Now I just need to mix up some more to continue sticking these rocks in place. So that's it. I've added all of the milliput that I'm going to add to secure the structure together. What I'm going to do now is wait for all of that to dry. The issue that I'm facing with putting the milliput onto the rocks at the moment is that the rocks are trying to slide around a little bit on the glass base. I didn't want to secure the rocks to the base because I wanted the ability, once it was done, to, you know, fine tune it and tweak it and put it where I want it. There is a possibility I may then stick it down to make sure that it doesn't shift, but that will only be loosely. The ability to be able to lift it out of the tank though in the future may arise, so that's something that I'll need to bear in mind. Do I want to have to break the rockwork apart or not be able to get under it if I need to? I don't think I want to secure it right down, but I might just put a few little blobs of milliput on the bottom that will help me to situate it to stop it from sliding. We'll see how that goes though. I may not need to do that, but at the moment I'm going to leave the milliput to set, and once that's all set I will go in with the D&D Aquascape construction epoxy, and I will cover over any of the areas that I can see where the milliput shows from the front and the sides where I'll be viewing it, and I'll just cover them over with that and maybe put a few little blobs in some areas where I want to add a little bit more integrity to the structure that's going to be right on show. So essentially that's it. I've made a scape that I like. I've taken into consideration the flow dynamic on how I want my power heads positioned and where they'll be flowing, how high the rockscape has come so that I've got plenty of room for my corals to grow up, gaining access to the sides in order to clean it, and the back. There are some little crevices and hidey holes within the rock where the fish can feel secure and hide if they ever feel a little bit stressed or just like to hide out within the rockwork. There are lots of little places and swim throughs for them to hopefully get a more realistic experience. All that'll be left to do will be to add the substrate in around the rocks. I don't like to put the substrate in first because I like the rockwork to be stable on the bottom of the tank before I add anything else in. If you add the sand in first and then you put the rocks on top, It may feel secure now because it's being packed out by the sand, but if you add anything to the tank that likes to shift sand around, say a engineering goby or other sand sifting gobies, or even maybe a pistol shrimp that will be mining underneath the rocks, there's a potential for either to make it unstable or even to burrow under a rock, which then falls down on top of them and subsequently crushes them. So all done for now, and we will be adding the substrate in the next episode. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos from me. Take it easy guys, and I'll see you in the next video.